always like to talk about a business that I've become very passionate about over the last number of years. But just before I get there, just to reflect back on Doris Viljoen's talk. And it's always very jarring to hear about the extent that we waste food, particularly given the context of our country where so many don't have enough. And it's one of the privileges to work for a packaging business, is that one of the solutions for food waste is appropriate and well-designed packaging. And I think that's a never-ending road, and I think there's so much more work to be done. But moving on to Mpact Recycling business, just to give you a bit of an idea of what we do. So our business is really at the heart of the circular economy. And as you can see from the slide there, on the left-hand side, we always show recycling in a much bigger box than everyone else, much the most important business around. But from our business, we supply raw materials into paper mills, into plastics manufacturing and recycling operations. Those materials then move on to industrial operations where they're used for packaging, primarily in our industry, or for capital goods. Those manufacturing operations tend to produce a certain amount of waste and rejects, etc. And that comes back into the recycling chain and back into our products. And like you mentioned earlier, the model that they use in Mpact plastic containers, where they will swap out old, broken, worn-down material, recycle it, produce new goods from that. And the paper industry very much the same. We make paper, we sell it to corrugated box manufacturers. They make boxes. Those boxes go into packaging organizations. They get up to the consumer, and then we get them back through our recycling business into that chain. And so this creates a virtuous cycle which makes a considerable difference, not just to the economy, but to the environment. And as you'll see from some of my slides, the third leg of sustainability, the impact on social development and the poverty in our country. Just to talk a little bit briefly about how our business is structured, we have essentially three divisions to our operations. The first is essentially a procurement business, where we buy paper from the open market, we buy plastics and other goods, and we sell that directly to our own paper mills and to other recycling operations. We have a second division of our business where we collect material directly from either the hawkers on the street, from businesses, from supermarkets, from industrial operations. We call that our collections business, and we have 15 branches around the country that we operate ourselves. And attached to that, we have a division which does a lot of work in post-consumer collections, schools, communities, estates, and that sort of work. And we do a huge amount of education work through that division as well, which I'll talk a little bit about as well. And the third leg to our business, which is perhaps the newest addition, is our waste management operations that we now run, where we are providing services and solutions to companies and other organizations to enable them to manage the backyard, what is generally the backyard of their business, recover material, repurpose it, and add value to them and to the broader society. We have quite an extensive footprint in the country. We have 15 of our own operations. You can see generally where they're located in the dark green dots. And the lighter green dots just an indication of the location of the various dealers that supply us and the people that we have long-term relationships with. It's a really interesting business, recycling. It's very much a local industry. What happens in a recycling in Stellenbosch is dramatically different to what happens in recycling in Cape Town or in Bloemfontein or Johannesburg or even Durban. So every market is very, very local. The way the recycling activity works is very local to that market. It depends on who's there, who's operating, who's consuming goods, who's manufacturing goods, etc. And so one of the first things I learned when I got into this business is that from our office in Tulisa Park in Johannesburg, it's absolutely impossible for me to tell our branch manager in Cape Town how to run their business, because it's a different world down here. And that's what we've learned over many years, is that you can't do this business on your own. You have to do it in partnership with people who are on the ground in the environment where you wish to collect your materials. And that's built a very long-term relationships in our business. I mean, this recycling business that I have the privilege to run now is a successor to about 50 years of legacy, of history. Started many, many years back. And that's been the foundation of it, is this long-term partnerships with people. And some of our dealers, we lost one of our dealers passed away about a year or two ago, and he had a 40-year relationship with us. And that's the way that this circular economy needs to work, at long-term partnerships with people. Just talk a little bit about our branch network. Our focus on running our own branches is to be close to where the source of recyclable goods is, where people are finishing the use of their packaging, close to homes and communities, close to industrial centres, close to major retail outlets, so that you get that material in at the lowest possible cost into our system. Just a couple of pictures about showing some of our branches. We have a big setup in Springs. We obviously have a paper mill in Springs. We have a collection centre on that site where we can buy from the local communities and bring material into it. But we've invested very heavily, as you can see, in a large open space of concrete, 5 hectares in total, where we can collect and store material, recyclable material. And that's another feature of our industry, is it's very, very cyclical. But a lot of the people that supply us are the individual traders of very small businesses. And in a cyclical business, if you stop buying, those people literally go out of business within a couple of weeks. And so we've built the capacity to keep buying through the ups and downs of the market and keep the sustainable, keep these enterprises that we deal with sustainable over the complete commodity cycle. We've recently invested in a new facility in Durban, in Bridge City, near Phoenix Industrial Park. A very large facility of 17,000 square meters, just really to increase our footprint in Durban, a very important market for us. And this is a photo. We only started this operation up last week, so the photo is a little bit old, but we've put solar power on that roof, and a very small portion of that roof. And we can actually run that entire operation during the day on solar power alone. If we were able to wheel the power, which we hope one day we will be able to do, we could probably generate almost 2 megawatts off that site. So these are the opportunities that arise when you start to think of an operation rather than just recycling, but a bit broader. What am I doing to impact on the environment, and how can I make this whole project more sustainable in the long run? You can see in the back we've got some water towers collecting water off a roof that size. In Durban, you can collect a significant portion of anything you're going to need to use. So those are the sort of thinking that's going into the direction we want to go. Another facility we've just recently acquired in Pretoria, where we are looking to expand in that market as well. We have a sorting facility there where we're able to buy mixed materials, mixed recyclables, sort them into different grades, add value to the products that are coming out, and then trade them into the market. That's a very exciting new development. We've been able to combine a number of our facilities into one there. And lastly, we've just expanded in Cape Town, opened our second branch. Again, you can see a focus very much on white grades in this market, printed copier papers in that market. So some of our key customers, obviously we supply our own mills. It's our biggest customer of ours, and the original intention of the original rationale for the creation of this business. But over the years, we've diversified quite substantially. We're now the biggest supplier of glass, old glass or cullet, as they call it in that industry, into console. And we've got that market spread pretty much around the country now as well. We're also one of the biggest suppliers into Extra Pet of recycled PET bottles. And of course, as part of our circular economy, we buy some of that recycled PET into our plastics business, and that goes into new bottles that we make and provide into the industry. And then we're the largest supplier of white grades of paper into Twin Saver, all that product destined to make tissue, and we supply them here in Cape Town and in Johannesburg. So those are also 4 of our largest customers, but quite a much wider range that we have as well. One of the key issues of our business is that the amount of recyclables that you can collect is limited by how much is actually consumed in the country, and that's the one side. And the second thing is how enthusiastic people are to get out of bed in the morning and go and collect it. And so we put a lot of effort into growing the collection of recyclable material. We do this through a number of ways, and I'll talk through a few of those. Firstly, we deal with over 150 different suppliers around the country, different dealers in small towns and throughout the country. And we put a lot of effort into training. We have reps who visit on a regular basis who have technical expertise about how to recycle various materials, how to add value to recyclable goods. We provide equipment and other expertise for them. We also get involved in all the recycling and associations and the various product representative organizations, driving the whole recycling drive for every product. As you know, with the new legislation, there's now extended producer responsibility. So every grade of material, people are trying to work out how they're going to increase the recycling rates and meet the targets that are being set. And the penalties, when they finally come into play, are going to be quite high for grades of material that are not recycled. And we'll see people paying a lot of money to try and get the balance between recyclable materials, which will pay less, and those that are not recyclable, where you'll pay a lot more. But a lot of the product's only recyclable if there's someone in the country who can recycle it. And a lot of work needs to happen to develop opportunities and create industries and businesses that can take that material, convert it into something new. And part of the challenge always when you want to recycle a new product is you have this chicken and egg situation. You're going to make a big investment in a recycling facility before you can collect the material, or do you make the investment in the collection side, build up enough material to be able to supply a factory? And those are the sort of challenges that one goes through in developing markets for new products, like liquid packaging, polystyrene, and various materials like that, which are somewhat more difficult to recycle. I said we put a lot of money into infrastructure. We've invested in our business about $500 million over the last 6 or 7 years, creating capacity for storage, creating new operating units, investing in equipment which we put around the country, and just making sure that this recycling industry continues to grow and to reach more and more people. We also put a lot of effort into education and about recycling, and that's mainly through our schools and community programs. We have a character called Mondi Recycler who visits schools, primarily Durban, Cape Town, and the Gauteng area. And last year we communicate with over 600,000 pupils from preschool all the way through to matric. And although you make a lot of effort and you get a little bit of paper back and plastics and other grades back, the benefit is not immediate in that. But we've seen it many years later. This program has been running probably 20 or 30 years, and you often bump into people who said, I remember Ronnie visiting my school many years back and changed my way I think about recycling. And so it's an investment made to a large extent in faith, but I believe those are the sort of things that make long-term differences. It's just sowing seeds in people's lives at a time when they're open to hear and open to receive, and making them think about something that they might not think about normally. But it generates an enormous amount of enthusiasm at the schools, and I say, although it doesn't make a huge difference to our bottom line, it certainly makes a difference to the circular economy of our country. Another area where we've done a lot of development work and where so much more needs to be done is collections and recycling in deep rural areas. One of the challenges of recycling is that it's a reverse logistics exercise. So if you're manufacturing goods, you have a big bulk of material at your factory and you distribute it to smaller and smaller volumes as you go closer to your consumer. In the recycling industry, you start at the consumer with tiny volumes. So in our business, although we collect over 600,000 tons of recyclable materials, the unit of measure that we use is kilograms, because we buy by the kilogram. You'll see, not so much in this part of the world, but in Gauteng particularly, a lot of people on the streets pulling trolleys. And they might collect about 80 kilograms of material in a day's work. And it's generally a very long day. but that's how you buy it, small amounts. And there might be 3 or 4 different types of material in that bag. We buy it in little small quantities throughout the country, making little incremental differences. The issue with collections in deep rural areas and a lot of small towns, there's simply not enough volume of material in that area to justify the cost. And so you've got to find ways of consolidating collections into small pockets around that can sort of be self-sustaining. And this project we started off about 10, 15 years ago. And now we have a branch in Richards Bay. And from Richards Bay all the way up to Pongola, we have about 20 or 30 small dealers operating in little towns on landfill sites. That's a typical Zululand landfill site. It's literally a piece of earth in the countryside that everyone's dumping on. Very few national rules and regulations apply. But on those sites, there are people who are earning a living because they can collect the material. You can see the piles of sorted material behind that guy there. We send a truck around to each site. We load bags of material up, and that generates income for numbers of people in that area. So 20 or 30 business owners, and each of them supported by probably another 20 or 30 collectors who are making a living doing that. Just a bit of an infographic, some of the stats about our industry. Recycling in South Africa is actually pretty advanced for the state of our economy and the nature of and the distribution of our resources. Paper recycling in South Africa, about 70% of the paper that we consume is actually collected and brought back into the system, which compares very favorably with other first world countries. And then plastics, about 43%, again, very comparable with European levels. PET is a particular success story in South Africa. 62% of the PET bottles that are consumed in South Africa are collected. When you consider some of those bottles are weighing with 20, 30, 40 grams, it's a huge number of material that's coming back. And then glass, about 44% collected and recycled. I haven't put cans in there, but that's even better collection rates, around about 70, 80 to 80%. But what's interesting is that figure in the middle, at least 60,000 people who are dragging bags around the country, making a living out of this industry. And for many of those people, there's very little alternative. What businesses like mine do is provide not only a market for them, but also taking opportunities like buyback trucks, buyback centers, moving them close as we can to the source of where that material is collected. But as we've going into this brave new world where everything is digitizing, our industry is probably one of the slowest to catch up. But we're starting to work towards that and changing the way we interact and interface with our customers. We've just started a WhatsApp for Business program where people can communicate, our suppliers can communicate with us, much easier than normal. And particularly, we started this in the schools market where teachers are normally very, very busy. There's no time to get to a phone, but just a quick WhatsApp, and they can get all the information they need from us, order collections, etc. And then for our waste management business, we've created a portal where we can give the sort of information companies need in order to comply with their ISO 14,000 requirements or all other environmental certifications collated together and give a reflection back to them of what's happening in their business, how much waste we've recycled, diverted from landfill, etc. And measure the carbon impact of that. Just to talk a little bit about the waste management business, because I think it's a sector that's probably not well known and understood in the country, and it's becoming more and more important, particularly as environmental certifications become important. Essentially, what this business does is it takes the backyard, someone's backyard, and we make it our front yard, and see what we can do about reducing the waste that organization generates, managing and disposing of it in a responsible manner, and providing the statistics and data that they require for their sustainability targets. But essentially, a waste management business is taking a view of a company's waste generation and saying, how can we improve it and manage this from a front yard point of view as opposed to a backyard point of view. providing smarter, sustainable solutions. It's a major key driver of the economy, of the circular economy. And obviously for recycling business like ours, it's a major source of recyclable materials. So currently we're operating on about 300 sites where we have staff on site managing operations. We have pretty much a footprint in the major economic areas, Joburg, Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, and we've got some operations up in Polokwane. And the key about this is understanding the whole concept of waste minimization and seeing what you can do to reduce the environmental footprint of our clients. Another factor that's become really important is helping our clients get to grips with the whole concept of extended producer responsibility. The law's been out for a long time. The regulations came out recently, very disputed, very much a lot of debate. And as in many government regulatory processes, it takes a long time for what the law says to manifest itself in the way we live and operate every day. But the reality is that these laws are pretty much based on what happens in Europe, and the environmental pressures that people and the compliance issues that Europeans have to deal with are coming here, and they're going to have a major impact on how we operate. So essentially, if you produce anything, you're responsible for the disposal of the final products that you sell into the market. And that's going to have more and more interesting implications as we go forward. Some of the sort of services one offers in a waste management business is looking at a product that is considered waste. What can you do with it either as an alternative fuel and for composting? What can you do to divert that material through reuse, recycling, or alternative use and get it out of landfill sites? We do a lot of sorting of waste material on site, and I never cease to be amazed at just how much opportunity there is. For example, we had a business we took on recently at a printing plant down here in Cape Town, and they were disposing of at least 4 to 5 skips of waste material every month. Just by looking at what was going into those waste skips, we were able to reduce that to less than 1 skip a month, just on the basis of pulling out the recyclable materials. And most of it was really good, high-value paper. But you've got to put a system in place. You've got to understand what the value of the material is. And once you put that in place, you can make a dramatic difference to the waste footprint of an operation. Some of our big customers, Bidvest, Clicks, Shaven, Gibson, Novus, Massmart. We've got into the fruit industry recently, and we're very excited about the opportunities that we're seeing in that industry. Pick and Pay, and of course some of our own operations. Just as a prime example of what I mentioned earlier, taking someone's backyard, as we saw in the Clicks DC in Johannesburg, that's what it looked like when we arrived. When it's our front yard, that's what it's got to look like. And that's really what waste management is all about, is taking someone else's mess and making something of value out of it. Westphalia, we started operation there in Midrand. They were disposing of all their fruit into landfill at huge cost. We found some solutions for them that have dramatically reduced the cost and made a significant difference to the environmental impacts and carbon footprint of that business. So very exciting things to see there. And another fruit business in the Roodepoort area. So we think, as I say, there's always opportunity when someone takes a fresh look at what you're doing. And so often no one goes to the backyard. It's not your front of your business. No one worries about what's happening once the goods are disposed of out of your main operating centers. And paying attention to that, that's where the opportunities arise for us. Thank you very much. I think that last video just encapsulates what we're about.